In today's Warzone video, I have the top 7 most broken guns you guys can use. These are 100% going to be the most meta builds for the best guns in the game right now. If you happen to enjoy today's video, give it a like, subscribe, notifications turned on, and let's hop into this. All right, first thing we're going to be doing here is we're going to be giving you guys a build for the MP40. This is a gun a lot of people really like still to use, even though it's got a couple nerfs, a couple buffs, a different few updates. But let's give you guys a build for the MP40. First thing in the muzzle category, we're going to go for that beautiful recoil booster for that increase in overall fire rate. We've run this on pretty much all of our Vanguard SMGs. In the barrel section, we're going to go for the last barrel here, the 189mm short barrel, damage range, bullet velocity, and of course that beautiful limb damage. This is really solid. We don't worry too much about the con there, which is headshot damage. In the other barrel section, we have a couple different options in here. A lot of people like to run the M1341 hand stop, and then I also see a lot of people like to run the Mark V skeletal. It just kind of all depends if you can control the recoil or not. If you can't control the recoil or having trouble with it, go for the hand stop. If you can't control it, I'd recommend the Mark V skeletal, as that's really good and it's not really gonna mess with anything that's too important because we don't really hip fire much with the MP40. Magazine section, we're gonna go for the 7.62 Gorenko 45 round mag. Been running this ever since the start of Warzone, the integration, everything like that, so always go for this. Ammunition, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go for lengthened tier for the increase in bullet velocity. And then in the rear grip section, we have a couple different options in here, but more or less everybody just goes for what is it? It's the taped grip up here, aiming stability, movement speed, weapon swap quickness, and sprint to fire speed. It's a fantastic rear grip, and I'd highly suggest you guys be using this on a lot of your SMGs and stuff like that. And then in the optics section, different couple options here as well. You could go for the Night Arm Model 47, that's one of the red dots, or the slate reflector. My personal preference is to go for the slate reflector, but also what people like to do is, I don't see it as much, but they go for one of the iron sights down here at the very bottom, as they are very easy to be able to see through. It just kind of comes down to personal preference. What you want, you get a bit of an ADS benefit here with this, but with the slate reflector, you do not. You just get, I guess, a tad bit more magnification. I kind of prefer the slate reflector, but that in this case is just personal preference outright. In the stock section, what we're going to go for is the Krausnik 33M folding here for the increase in sprint to fire speed and movement speed. This is a really good stock. And then in perk 1, what we're going to do is we're going to go for brace for the initial firing recoil. So maybe if you don't run the hand stop, this is definitely going to still help you out in that capacity. And then in perk 2, what we're going to do is we're going to go for quick for the overall increase in sprint speed. This is my full build here for the MP40. This thing is incredibly good, super meta right now. Definitely try it out and be using it. Our next up, we're going to give you guys a build here for the NZ41. This is still my go-to AR in Warzone right now, and for good reason. It's just so unbelievably consistent. Very minimal recoil to like zero recoil at all, and it's just a fantastic AR. So build here in the muzzle category, first thing we're going to go for is going to be the MX silencer, sound suppression, horizontal, vertical recoil control, and damage range. This is definitely a really solid option. I've seen some people try to go for the Mercury silencer because it actually has zero cons, but I would just say the MX definitely outweighs any of the cons. Like, all those benefits are really solid, so I'd definitely go for this. Barrel section, we go for the Orb Weaver 360mm BC barrel. This is going to make this thing an absolute laser beam, so 100% go for the Orb Weaver. In the underbarrel section, what we're going to do is we're going to go through on the M1930 Strife Angle. This is going to help out with your horizontal recoil control. I've also used to run the M1941 hand stop. You guys can still definitely run the hand stop, but I always go for the Strife Angle nowadays, and I just, if you can tell by any of my gameplays you've ever seen it, I mean, I'm always just frying people with this thing, no recoil. Magazine section, we go for the 6.5mm Sakura 50 round mag. This is definitely just the way to go on this thing, though I actually have seen people run the Clouser 40, and that's kind of like, a personal preference thing, but I always go for the Sakura 15. It does me justice. I've dropped so many 30 bombs using this exact build. Ammunition side of things, we're going to go for lengthened for that increase in bullet velocity, of course. In the rear grip section here, what we're going to do is we're going to go for the hatched grip here, vertical horizontal recoil control, and flinch resistance with no cons. It's kind of like the taped grip for the SMGs, no cons, and it's just super beneficial, so go for this. Optics section, I'm going to go all the way down pretty much mostly to the bottom here, which is going to be the SVT scope, the 3 to 6 times magnification. This is an incredible attachment, very easy to be able to use, and I prefer this actually nowadays over even the G16 2.5x, as that's what I was running before in exclusively, but now I've switched over to this and I've just not gone back, so definitely check this out. Stock section, we're going to go for the Orb Weaver EPAC, recoil control, recovery, accuracy, and flinch resistance. It's gonna make you an absolute laser, so it's really solid. Perk 1, we're gonna go for brace for the initial firing recoil. That'll be making more of a laser beam. And then in perk 2, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go for fully loaded for that maximum starting ammo capacity, as there really isn't anything in here that I do believe to be all that great. So this is my full build here for the NZ41. By the way, don't know if this camo actually stays on the gun in game, but I have at least here in the created class. Next up, I'm gonna give you guys a build here for the H4 Blixen. This is probably like my favorite SMG to use in Warzone right now. It's just so good, and I have an incredible build for it. It's pretty much broken. So first thing, muzzle category, we're gonna go for recoil booster here. Like I said, we always go for the recoil booster on these Vanguard SMGs. Barrel section, we're gonna go is for the last barrel here, the Bergstrom 17 F3 barrel. We switched over from running the Johnson over to the Bergstrom. This is definitely the way to go on this gun. In the underbarrel section, this is where it gets a little bit unique, is that we don't use pretty much anything we use on a regular SMG. We actually go for the SG98 Compact. And this is an attachment that I really wasn't too sure on when I was trying it out initially, and me and my buddies were going back and forth on what to use. But this is the way to go here for this specific build. Like, trust me on this one, it's really solid. Magazine, we're gonna go for the 7.62 Gorenko 54 round mag. We just always go for the Gorenko 54 over the 36. This gives you increased torso damage, but it's that damage multiplier, and the way it actually, the damage drop off is, it doesn't really do you hardly any benefit. So I'd much rather have 54 rounds in this magazine here as opposed to 36. Like, you just win so many more gunfights having this mag. Ammunition side of things, we're gonna go for Langton for the increase in bullet velocity. And then in the rear grip section here, we can go for a couple of different things, but for this build, we actually go for the grooved grip, ADS-5 move speed, and horizontal recoil control. This is gonna allow you to strafe back and forth pretty fast, and also you're gonna be hitting a lot of shots. You do have a couple of cons here, but we're gonna fix that in just a second. In the optics section, we're gonna go for the slate reflector here. I always go for a slate reflector here. I never go for the iron sights. Like I said with the other gun, you can go for the Night Arm Model 47 if you want to use a different red dot sight. That's personal preference between the Night Arm model and the slate reflector, but I always go for the slate. In the stock section, I'm going to go for the Bergstrom MB, hip fire accuracy, ADS speed, and of course movement speed. Gotta love this one. You don't notice any of that recoil control con. It's just non-existent. And then in perk 1, what we're going to go is we're going to go for fleet for weapon swap quickness and movement speed. This kind of almost is like having amped, but for only one gun, so it's kind of a little bit cool like that. And then in perk 2, we're going to go for quick for that overall increase in sprint speed. This is an incredible build here for the H4 Blixen, my go-to, and it is just an absolute slapper. All right, now we're gonna give you guys a build here for my other favorite SMG in Warzone right now, the Marco 5. I know a lot of people are running this thing right now, along with that Blixen, and for good reason. It's really solid. So muzzle, we're gonna go for recoil booster here. I'm not gonna explain it. Barrel section, there's a couple of different things people like to do in here. People like to either go for the Amaretto, and that's like, you know, their go-to on this thing, or in my preference is the body 240mm VL barrel for the increase in fire rate. I use this strictly as a close range SMG, and I don't really care too much if it bounces around a little bit. I'd much rather have a faster TTK and everything like that, just because I'm using this at very close range. So I'd like that increase in fire rate over a little bit more recoil controllability. I really don't care about that too much. So I go for this one right here. Underbarrel section, I'm going to go for the Mark V Eye Skeletal here for ADS speed and movement speed. Gotta love this thing. It's going to make you an absolute like movement phenom. It's kind of ridiculous. Magazine, we're going to go for the 8mm Nambu 64 round drum. I really like having 64 rounds in a mag. On an SMG, it's a little bit ridiculous to have that much ammo. You can take out full squads with a single mag, so gotta love that. Magazine or ammunition side of things, my bad. We're going to go for Langton for the increase in bullet velocity. And then in the rear grip section, what we're going to do is we're going to go for the tape grip here, aiming stability, movement speed, weapon swap quickness, and sprint to fire speed. I mean, this is just like the bee's knees for a rear grip. It's super good. Optic, we're going to go for the slate reflector here, much like I said for anything else. Slate, Night Arm Model 47, it doesn't matter, go for it. But pretty much stay away from the iron sights, so really not all that great. Stock section, we're going to go for the Amaretto FR, initial fire and recoil, recoil recovery, ADS speed, and of course movement speed. So that's really solid. And then in perk 1, we're going to go for momentum here for movement speed after kills. And then in perk 2, we're going to go for quick for the increase in sprint speed. This is my full builds here for this gun. Absolutely love the Marco 5. Super dominant SMG right now. That and the Blixen, top tier. Next up, let's give you guys a build here for the Zero Recoil Cooper Carbine. This is a really solid gun to use in Warzone right now as a true AR. So let's get into this thing. First thing, muzzle, we're going to go for the MX silencer here. We're on the MX over the Mercury on this one as well as we do for the NZ41. In the barrel section, what we're going to do is we're going to go for the 22 Cooper Custom. This is a very good barrel to make this thing very accurate and controllable at range, and also increase your fire rate. So, I mean, this is just an incredible barrel overall, and I recommend for this one exclusively. In the underbarrel section, I'm going to go for the M13 hand stop for the vertical and horizontal recoil control. It's not like the NZ where you can get away with running that like strife angled. I don't believe it to be that way. I go for the M13 hand stop. Magazine, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go for the 9mm 60 round drum. This is overall just such a great drum. You run this if it's an AR, if you're making this an SMG, it doesn't matter. You pretty much run this anyways. Ammunition, we're of course gonna go for lengthened here, but there's the unique one for this specific gun here, which is the compressed rounds, which increases your fire rate. I've ran the compressed rounds, I've also ran lengthened. I believe the compressed rounds makes it so that your gun jumps up a little bit too much for it to be that effective as an AR, so I much prefer to run lengthened and just get that increase in bullet velocity. In the rear grip section here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go for the hatched grip, which is that vertical horizontal recoil control and flinch resistance. This is just really solid. Optic, much like we did for the NZ41, I'm going to go down here and I'm actually going to throw on where it is the SVT scope right there, the 3 to 6 times magnification. You guys can also run, if you really want to, something like, you know, the G16 2.5x, but I go mostly for the SVT scope on this gun. Stock, what we're going to do is we're going to go for the Cooper 45W. This is a really solid stock. I've been running this for a minute now, and it's definitely making me hit a lot of my shots. And then in perk 1, what we're going to go is for tight grip here for accuracy and recoil during sustained fire. It's going to make you more of a laser beam, which is really solid. And then in perk 2, we're going to go for that beautiful fully loaded, because we're going to be blowing through a lot of ammo with this gun. So this is my full build here for the Cooper carbine. Super good. And definitely should be using the Cooper. Taking a bit of a step back here for some of these 10 attachment weapons, we have a gun that snuck its way into the meta here, the M13, and I got a really good build for it, so let's hop into it. Muzzle category, we're going to go for the mono suppressor. Sound suppression, damage range, we run this on all of our Modern Warfare weapons. Barrel, we're going to go for the Tempest Marksman, damage range, bullet velocity, and that beautiful recoil control. Gotta love this thing. And then in the underbarrel, this is where people like to kind of debate with me a little bit. I personally go for the Commando foregrip because I can control that recoil. It's not going to be all that bad. And I prefer to use this more of a medium range AR, not as much of a long range AR. So I go for the Commando, even if regardless of what I'm running it as, I always go for the Commando. But if you feel like the recoil is too much, go for something like the Ranger foregrip, and that should help stabilize this thing out for what you need it for. But otherwise, I mean, just go for the Commando foregrip. Magazine section, we're gonna go for the 60 round mag here for the increase in ammo capacity. I'm a 60 round mag kind of guy, so I always go for the 60. And then in the optic section, we have a couple options in here. So we're either the Corp Combat Hollow, which is a really solid option for this. That's one of my go-tos, or the VLK 3x optic. And then you also, of course, down here at the very bottom, have the PBX Hollow 7 sight, which is kind of like a replacement for the Corp Combat. Does the same thing. It just looks a little bit different, and in my opinion, a little bit cooler. So it's up to you guys when you want to be able to run out of those 3 options, but the Corp Combat Hollow or the VLK is gonna be my go-to. It's my full build here for the M13, super good, and it's definitely creeped its way back into the meta. I'm pretty happy about that because I love the M13. And for our last gun here today, we're gonna give you guys a build with the literal zero recoil KG M40. This is a really solid gun. I also got a variant for it with that gold camo on it. So let's hop into this thing. Muzzle category, we're gonna go for that beautiful MX silencer on this thing. Gotta love the MX. Barrel section, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go for the Reisdorf 720mm shrouded barrel. This is gonna make this thing as accurate and controllable as it can be for being a true AR, so that's why I go for this thing. And then in the underbarrel section, we're gonna go for the M1930 strife angled grip here. I mean, you really don't need the hand stop on this thing. I would just say the strife angle is definitely the way to go. I've been having great success with it. Magazine, we're gonna go for the 8mm Clouser 60 round drum. This is a really solid attachment right here. There's no reason to switch this up. This works out perfectly. Ammunition, plankton, increase in bullet velocity, of course. Rear grip, we're gonna go for the hatched here, vertical and horizontal, and flinch resistance, really solid. So I've been running this for a while now, and I mean, I literally just don't see recoil at all. Optic section, much like we did for the other true, you know, ARs, we're gonna go for the SVT 3 to 6 times scope. Absolutely love this on this gun, specifically because it's super accurate, very controllable, like no recoil, so you can hit a lot of shots at very long distances. And then in the stock section, we're gonna go for the first stock here. This is the VDD 24SZ adjustable. I've seen other people try to run some other stuff in here, but I just go for the adjustable, and I found it to be really solid. ADS speed, aim walking movement speed, and of course, in the increase in accuracy. I don't really care about those cons. I just believe this is a really solid stock. In perk 1, we're gonna go for tight grip here for accuracy and recoil during sustained fire. This is gonna make you more of a laser beam. And then in perk 2, we're gonna go for fully loaded. So this is my full build here for this thing. This has been my top 7. You guys enjoyed today's video, give it a like, subscribe, notifications turned on, and I'll see you guys all later. Just don't trouble cap, don't be Randy, and I'm out. Peace.